Hello everybody and welcome to episode 1 of LRN Diary Editions. Today we are going to be talking about the Miami GP weekend so far, practice sessions 1 and 2, the latest news and takeaways from me of the weekend so far going into the third practice session and qualifying later today. First piece of news, the big news, Mercedes, are they back? Could they be in P1, P4? 18, so what we're looking at for George Russell, 129.938, big lap from George again, continuing his form for Mercedes with Hamilton a strong fourth. Now there is of course the chance that Ferrari and Red Bull are sandbagging, and I would fully expect them in qualifying trim to take back their rightful place in first and second, but it appears Mercedes are by far now back in third place, ready to challenge for podiums, possibly even race wins if the upgrades they've brought are good enough. That's certainly the big news coming out of the weekend so far. Hopefully we're going to see a three-way fight for those wins. Possibly not. Possibly we see Mercedes hanging around sort of third place with a sort of a clear advantage if McLaren can't quite catch up to the back of them. But to be honest, right now Mercedes look to have clamped down that third place, and it'll be really interesting to see if they can keep up with the Mercedes and the Ferraris and challenge for those podiums through the rest of the weekend. And maybe it's track specific, maybe their car suits this track, maybe we haven't seen the best of the Ferrari and the Red Bulls, and maybe other teams too. But right now, with the results so far, Mercedes are looking strong, and I fully expect them to put in a better showing this weekend than they did last, at the very, very least. Second thing, and what is on everyone's lips, the jewellery dispute. Hamilton has been told under no circumstances will he be granted permission to keep his jewellery, and no exceptions will be made for him. The FIA have been clear on that. So we are looking at him having to ditch his jewellery for the remaining races, and I think that's the right decision. We should not be making exceptions for him because of who he is. Granted, I don't think there were many other drivers on the grid with a slew of jewellery to lose, and it does mainly impact him. But certainly I think if it's for safety reasons, it's the right thing to do. He has complied, and he has 2 races to get rid of the nose ring, which it's a bit more difficult to get out. But we fully expect him to drop that before that deadline finishes after the next 2 races. Sainz, Ferrari. Let's touch on Ferrari. So Ferrari have looked strong. Sainz was in P1 in practice session 2 when he has had yet another crash and continued to struggle to get the car pointing in the right direction. He is crashing it too often. He's had too many incidents this season so far, and I will fully expect that he needs to have a strong performance for the rest of the weekend now. If they're out in P3, I don't know what the extent of the damage is. If he's out in P3 today before qualifying, I'd expect to see him back at the front, putting in as many laps as he can to get used to the car, get used to the track. But he certainly seems to be struggling more than most to get really used to these new cars. He obviously finished ahead of Leclerc in the standings last season, but Leclerc has fully planted himself as the number 1 driver this season to date. Obviously, Ferrari haven't announced that Leclerc is a number 1, but if Sainz continues to struggle the way that he has, I fully expect the backing to head in Leclerc's favour before too long when it comes to putting him forward for the Drivers' Championship. So Sainz, if he wants to be involved in that conversation, is going to need to fix it soon, because otherwise he's going to be in a real struggle for the rest of the season. Now, midfield madness. Will we be seeing a huge fight in the midfield, down the grid? Everything behind those potentially front 3 now, from McLaren, everyone down to Williams, the rest of the teams. Are they going to be fighting hammer and tong, with it actually coming down for this time the driver's ability? Will the driver's ability finally come to the forefront of F1 with these brand new cars, where we are seeing that it is less to do with the ability of the car where they are more similar, and where these rules have brought the cars closer together, and we're going back in line with it being the ability of the driver to get the result out of the car. Now, of course, that isn't 100%. The ability of the car is still hugely important, and you see that with the performance of the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. But where the midfield is so close and the performance is so tight, it's going to be really interesting, especially in the inter-team battles, to see where those drivers come out. And I think a fantastic example of that has been Lando and Ricciardo at McLaren. Lando continuing to outperform Ricciardo. Will that continue to be the case in the future races? Can Ricciardo find some more form to bring himself back into contention and fighting Lando on a consistent basis? It's yet to be seen. And on that note with McLaren, it's come to light over the last couple of days, certainly new information to me. McLaren due to give IndyCar prodigy, someone that's highly thought of, a chance in the car to test the car later in the season. This could be leading to Ricciardo potentially leaving the team. If he can't become a more consistent performer, he can't get the points level of Lando, we could genuinely be seeing an opportunity here where Ricciardo may end up moving on. The car has struggled to suit him since he's joined the team. He's obviously keeping a straight face. He's continuing to be positive, positive outlook on the grid, on in the media. He is behind the scenes struggling. I think it's clear that he's struggling. He's open and honest that he's struggled over the last few years. But he is keen to point out that he thinks that's behind him. He thinks that he's moved past his hardest time. His mindset's better, and hopefully we see that an improved performance with Danny Ric, because otherwise we could see him drop a bit further down the grid in the pecking order and the drives that he does get in the future. And as someone that a lot of people tipped for a future world champion, I hope he can find some form and we can see McLaren push forward and a stronger performance from him. And maybe if he can start picking up the points consistently with Lando, we'll see McLaren rise again to fight with the Mercedes and the Ferraris and the Red Bulls where they frankly belong. Right, next we have Andretti F1. Confirmation from Andretti himself that he is indeed pushing to join F1. He has the money, he has the team in place, he has the infrastructure in place, he's got the money, but everything there ready to join F1. Everything is planned out, but there is one huge stumbling block, and that's the other teams. He's made it clear, without saying it directly, that the main stumbling block now for Andretti F1 becoming part of the F1 grid moving forward is the backing of the other teams in F1. It has become an issue because every team that comes into the sport, that prize pot gets shared between all of them. So where you have Andretti F1 coming in, you're going to have other teams in the grid, especially in the midfield, or the teams that really need the money. Haas, for an example, are they going to want another team coming in to the sport, potentially taking more of their prize money and further reducing their budgets moving forward? And I have to suggest possibly the answer to that is no. Not unless there are agreements in place or additional prize pots are added to the wider sport to accommodate yet another team. Also comes down to, is the grid getting too packed? Are we seeing too many teams? Are we having too many teams on the grid who aren't realistically going to be fighting at the front? I think we want to see as many teams as possible with the budget and resources to really push the front of the grid, to bring that pack closer together. And if other teams such as Andretti or the VW group, who have been mentioned as joining with one of their, well, two of their brands, one as a new team, which is expected to be Porsche or Audi, depending on, one will be a brand, one will be its own team. If they do that, and a team like Andretti joins as well, how will that look for the rest of the grid? How will the money work? Are we just going to see the pack widening, or are we going to have a situation where teams will be tested to ensure that they have the infrastructures in place, that they can truly challenge, and they're not just coming in to be a back marker? I think that'll be an interesting thing moving forward, interesting story moving forward, and we'll see how that unfolds over the rest of the season. Last bit of news, Alonso. he appears to have confirmed that he will be sticking around for at least another 2 seasons. I think this is fantastic news. I think that absolutely Alonso is still one of the best drivers on the grid. He's proven he's still as wily as he ever has been. He's shown why he's a 2-time world champion. I think everybody would agree that his talent deserves more than that, especially when you look at drivers like Vettel, won 4 world championships. He is absolutely up there, and in my opinion, above Vettel in terms of his pure ability as a racing driver. So the fact that he's sticking around for 2 more years, I think, is fantastic, and I look forward to seeing him in the car for the next 2 seasons, and hopefully Alpine can give him a car that allows him to challenge, show his skills at the front of the grid again in the next couple of seasons, because it would be absolutely fantastic to see Alonso winning races again in Formula 1, but we shall see how that turns out. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe for future content, and I'll be back again soon to review the rest of the weekend and see how things have gone through qualifying and the race, and back again next week and future races for more content. Catch you all again soon. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.